I kept all the good things that I liked about Christianity, and I got rid of all the dogma and the garbage. And it started to open me up to things. And one day I had what I can only explain as a bliss attack. And this was 3 hours. I've had several of these. I actually had one just a couple weeks ago. It was amazing. They're unpredictable. I can't force them in, but I understand kind of what's going on. My brain is in this gamma brainwave state that's just creating these amazing vibrations. And so when I get these, and the first one was just absolutely incredible. It was 3 hours of just pure love, this feeling of just unadulterated just love, as well as these downloads coming to me as well. So
Welcome to the Go Slow to Go Fast lifestyle podcast, where we explore what it truly means to live with intention, calm, and clarity in a fast paced world. In this episode, I sit down with Justin Shaw, a self proclaimed mystic comedian whose work feels less like Hogwarts and more like a journey through the Force itself. His book, Sorcery 101, invites us to step beyond traditional spirituality and into something more expansive, more intuitive, and maybe even a little bit cosmic. With a fresh comedic approach, Justin shares insights that go beyond the thinking mind and tap directly into the quantum field of healing. This is a conversation that will have you laughing, reflecting, and maybe even seeing your own path a little more clearly. Let's get started. Justin, I just want to say thank you for agreeing to come on the Go Slow to Go Fast podcast and welcome to the show.
thank you for having me. It's good to be here, there, everywhere. It's the magic of the internet.
I know. Well, you have quite a story to share. And before we get into all of that, can you just kind of tell our listeners and share for our viewers what it means to you to go slow these days?
Yes. Yeah. In a society that's constantly go, 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 I have to take time every single day. Some people can go a day. I really can't without stopping to take time and meditate. And that is my going slow. That is my moment every morning. I take an hour and I usually do about half an hour of yoga on an app, and I do half an hour of sit kind of guided meditation, and that's my go slow time it needs every single morning. I usually get one in the afternoon or evening. Sometimes I do something that's a negotiable one, but my go slow is non-negotiable every day in the morning, and that is time I adore. So we need more. I have a tattoo on my arm that says, from the Bible, be still, because I need reminders to be still. I don't need reminders to stay active. I need a reminder to be still. So I got it tattooed on me. So go slow is a very important thing people need to embrace.
I agree. And I'm curious, do you do your yoga before you meditate or after?
Before, yeah, I found that before it's incredibly something happens when you loosen the body up, and I'm just able to just drop right into a meditation when the body is loose. And yoga was created, 5,000 years ago or whatever it was by monks as a precursor to meditation to kind of, it's just easier to be less restless when your body's loose and you've kind of moved it around a little bit, and you can
Hmm.
drop right in and just get in there. So yeah, it is before every meditation, I do some sort of stretching to just get myself in that zone.
Yes, agreed. I've just figured that out in my last year or so of doing these practices and like almost like they're in isolation. And then I realized they're supposed to be done together. And
Mhm.
it makes more sense because once you do your yoga first, then your meditation, you see a world of difference for sure.
Massive, massive. I suggest that to anyone. Yeah, and with it's with the apps where they are. I personally have Apple Fitness. But there's a million different apps that you can do it in your living room, and you don't have to necessarily go out to do yoga anymore. You can do it right here, and that's. I still like to. Groups is amazing, and I still love to do it in groups, but it's just too hard to get up in the morning and rush out and do it. So I living room, half an hour, meditate. And I am ready for the day.
I hear you. Do you want to take us back to how you got into being a comedian and where you kind of started that process?
Yeah, I was kind of raised in a household that, where emotion, it was just me and my mom. My brothers and sisters were much, much older. So they were moved out by the time I was born. And, my parents were older. And so When I there was already problems in in the relationship, before I came along, and then I came along, and the crack in the marriage was morphing into a canyon. So, they separated when I was pretty young, and so it was just me and my mom most of the time. And my mom had her own issues, her tough childhood upbringing, as well as the divorce going on, and she was in a lot of pain. And the way she dealt with her pain was to isolate, and so it was a very lonely kind of upbringing, I guess you could say. She would kind of get in her moods and just kind of go into her room and just kind of shut the door, and that would be
Mm,
my time to do whatever I could do to fill the time. And what did to fill my time was TV. TV was
mm,
the not only they say, television was a babysitter. It was a full blown parent. My mom was she was also very bad with emotion. She wasn't a hugger. She couldn't even say the word love very well. And I understood kind of why, as my parents were older, I didn't meet many of my grandparents, but the one parent I did meet was my mom's mom. And looking back on her now, she's for anyone out there that watches Always Sunny in Philadelphia, she was just like Mac's mom. She's a very crass woman, that kind of sat and she smoked her unfiltered Marlboros and her Jack Daniels, and that was just her daily. Hey kid, come give your granny a kiss. Kind of like just kind of an unpleasant woman, and certainly not warm by any stretch of the imagination. So looking back on who my mom was and looking at her mother is like, oh, this makes total sense. So yeah, it was a tough emotional upbringing, but you get into the kind of comedy aspects. Well, that's what I love to do. I watched the movies and TV of the kind of that made me laugh, and especially as I got a little bit older in the kind of 90s there. I'd stay up and watch SNL, and that was when Adam Sandler and David Spade and Chris Farley. It was the greatest lineup of SNL ever, I think. Even though there's been a lot, but I would just made me laugh. And Jim Carrey movies were just hilarious. In Living Color, that's all these things. The Simpsons were at the top of their game. That was just so many funny things, and I loved to laugh. And I found that I could do impressions and I was good at voices, and I could tell jokes and I could make people laugh. So that's what brought me out of my pain. I've been constantly looking for things my entire life to get me out of my pain, which is that spiritual bankruptcy. It's the common denominator in anyone who's struggling with any sort of emotional, mental illness, addiction, anxiety. It's all one core issue. We treat it as separate things in the society because we see nothing but separation, but that it is the same issue, and that's what the book gets into, and that's what sorcery is all about, treating that one core issue. So as I kind of got older, that was my kind of pain escape, food. I would isolate and kind of watch TV and video games and just do that stuff. And I wasn't super social. I just didn't care. And food was probably the other thing I turned to. And so I was a chunky kid, certainly. But as I got older, things just started getting worse for me, and I found, an escape with people. So I found I could make them laugh, and so I started doing that, and that was a high that got me out of. I was kind of a class clown, which got me in trouble a lot because I would do stupid things. Like the teacher would be up, like teaching fractions, and I'd like reach up and like grab the stapler or like her half-eaten bagel and like stuff in my backpack, and there'd be kids laughing behind me, and she'd be up there wondering what's so funny about long division. So and so it would be those kind of things, and that was like, okay, pain escape feels good. So as I entered high school, then drugs and alcohol started coming into the picture. That was an easier pain escape, and that was something that I could do all the time. I couldn't be around kids and people all the time, but I could smoke weed and drink beer and kind of sneak it and do that. So that became, and then, as I went into college, I became kind of more harder drugs. Pills were my favorite thing. And that was something that was given to me by doctors. And so that was one of the main starting points was, the benzodiazepines and the stimulants of ADHD medications and Adderall and Xanax and those things. And those worked really well. And so those were my first drugs. And then you got into more harder drugs that was about the time of the big opiate crisis, and oxycontin was just being thrown out to anyone who asked for it, and it was really easy to get, and so that hooked me. And so after college, there were nights I spent a couple weeks homeless, and I was in jail and rehabs and halfway houses, and it got bad. So that's around the time was like, okay, I need to go to rehab. I need to, so I went to rehab, late 20s, and the why I went into rehab was just like I am struggling because I am addicted to drugs. Just get me off these drugs, clean me out, and I will be fine. I didn't understand. I wasn't spiritual. I didn't go to church growing or anything. Like that. I kind of passively went to Sunday school. Didn't really care. Stopped going as early as I could. So the spiritual aspect meant nothing to me. It was like just clean my body out, and once my body's clean, I'm shaking and going through withdrawals, and once that's over, I'll be fine. And so I did that. I didn't do anything else, and I was surprised it lasted 3 months, and then it did. It lasted about 3 months, and then I was back out again. Everything I didn't pay attention to spiritual bankruptcy, nothing. So I then went back into rehab a second time and took it more seriously. I was like, okay, I'll listen to you guys now. I apparently don't know everything. So I started listening, and the whole spiritual aspects, like, okay, all right, fine. And, the AA, and, so this was a faith based treatment center. And so Christianity was their kind of thing. And so they didn't necessarily force it, but they certainly, put it way out there. And so I was like, okay, fine, whatever. So I started, something happened to me in kind of this spiritual circle, and I felt a little different. I felt good, and talking to people, and so about this Jesus person and all that, and that was making me feel good. And AA went right along with it. It's essentially disguised Christianity. Bill Wilson kind of built it from a foundation of Christianity, so they went very well together, these two things, and it worked until it didn't. So it was about 5 or 6 years of sobriety, and I was doing okay. I wasn't doing great. I was doing, average. I was functional, which I thought was doing amazing. Just being functional and having a place to live, having a car, not going to jail. These were things that I thought I was winning. And in a sense, I was doing okay, but mediocrity is where I was at for 5 or 6 years, just basic mediocrity. And, the whole Christian aid, I was doing that, doing that, doing that. And I was doing it up until my mother got very sick. And this is when things started to change. So she was pronounced terminally ill. And so the whole year, the last year of her life, was very obviously that's traumatic in itself. That's very difficult to deal with. I don't consider it necessarily a tragedy when a parent goes before a child, unless it's, child's an actual child. I was in my 30s and was hoping for a little bit more time, but parents are supposed to go before children. It still is, regardless. It's difficult. Grief. It's a hard time. But what made it 10 times worse is this programming that Christianity had in my brain that my mother, because she was not a practicing Christian, never went to church, didn't nothing. She was going to hell. So I was scared to death. So I'd be around her, and I can't imagine it was just full of fear, full of dread. I gave myself horrible thyroid diseases, and I gained 50 pounds and lost 60 pounds in a 10-month period. Like, I mean, just horrible, like, just it was just massive amount of stress. And so after she went, I started really questioning things, because going to the pastor, and they'd try to, like, be, they wouldn't say, well, she's in hell, but they wouldn't say she's not. And that really pissed me off. And so, this was a lady that was kind and sweet. She had her issues, no question, but we all do. And there's no question she was not deserving of eternal damnation. I don't think anyone is. So I started questioning things, and that's when things started happening. I replaced my pastor with a shaman, and he started coming in and seeing him, and he started opening me up to new things, questioning these beliefs I had in my system that were no longer serving me at all. I found out that Christianity for me was this, this beautiful mansion, right? Like a metaphorical mansion, right? It was 17 bedrooms and bathrooms, and there's a game room, there's a pool, and there's all these amazing things, and it's great inside the house, but then you get in the house and you're not allowed to leave. You're not allowed to investigate other religions, and that's damnation. They say outside the house, well, that's death, destruction. There's a zombie apocalypse up there. You can't leave. And so I started realizing that, and I started realizing also that this beautiful mansion is built on this cracked foundation of fear, judgment, and control. And so when my mother passed, that's when the mansion crashed on me, and it can crash at any time on anybody. And that's when it crashed on me. And so embracing these things and started meditating and getting rid of these beliefs that were placed in me. I kept all the good things that I liked about Christianity, and I got rid of all the dogma and the garbage. And it started to open me up to things. And one day I had what I can only explain as a bliss attack. And this was 3 hours. I've had several of these. I actually had one just a couple weeks ago. It was amazing. They're unpredictable. They I can't force them in, but I understand kind of what's going on. My brain is in this gamma brainwave state that's just creating these amazing vibrations. And so when I get these, and the first one was just absolutely incredible. It was 3 hours of just pure love, this feeling of just unadulterated just love, as well as these downloads coming to me as well. And this is what happened with the book. It wasn't the first time, but it was another bliss attack that the book came to me. And I've had, like I said, several of these, and I realized that, you know, this is it. And now I understand what's going on here, what this is all about. Because all these truths and downloads that were coming to me were I knew to be truths. It was like I had been on airplane mode my whole life. That's the best way to explain it. A phone in airplane mode is not living up to its potential. So that's when I realized that source energy, the sorcery, that's when things started to really change. So that's, yeah,
Wow.
it's a little long winded, but
Yeah.
I got it all in there.
Yeah. So you had 2 stints in rehab. Then you came to
Five.
the realiz 5. You had 5.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. It was, yeah. Yep. Yep.
Wow. And then from there is where you started working with the shaman?
Yes, yeah, it was after the 3rd stint in rehab, and I started working with a shaman, and, even when things so something that incredible can still happen, but and it's like a phone ringing, and, like, it's
Mm.
like calling
Mm.
you to do things, and it's like this phone ringing, and it's one of those really obnoxious rings too. It's not a ringtone, it's one of those really old school rings, and so, I had this bliss attack, and it was, like, amazing, all this stuff, but I was still struggling at the time. I was going through a lot of things. Things were happening with, the death of my mom. I had a sister die, I had a best friend die. I had a fiance who just left and took our infant child and went to Boston and just never came back and then cut me out. I haven't seen him in 3 years. So I had some stuff going on that was really difficult to deal with, and I was dealing with it in with drugs and alcohol. But for the last 2 years after the final time, that's when things got serious with the book and my mission. And that's when I started taking things seriously and complete sobriety. And that's when things really changed. But no, it was not after that first amazing. You'd think like, oh, you're awake and everything's better now. That's
Mhm.
not how it works. It's this process is nonlinear. So yeah, so that's it's a good question. It's good for people to know that like this crazy awakening happening, and I still struggled. So like it's
Sure.
it's embracing it's embracing this new change is what's really helped.
Yeah, and I like that you said, you received these downloads in your bliss attack, and it's not like it's gonna be automatic, everything's, unicorns and rainbows. You still have to do the work. You still have to process through it. Yeah, it's a lot. So, you've had several bliss attacks since the first one.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. So,
So yeah,
do
one
you
of them
feel it coming on, or does it just hit you out of nowhere?
I do feel it. I do feel it when it starts to happen, and it's usually not in a meditation. That's the most
Mm.
interesting part. Is it'll so one of the ones, and I'll tell you the one that came in the book because it's just incredible. So right after my ex fiance left with our child and cut me out of their life, I moved to Sedona. Sedona's here in Arizona. It's a very spiritual place, and it was like I need healing. The Native Americans used to go up there and they would stay there for a time. Most of them didn't live there. They'd stay because the energy is so strong. They'd kind of go there to heal and then come back. So I didn't have much of a plan. I just moved up there and just, maybe I'll stay up there. Maybe I'll come back. I don't know. I just got to go. So I
Mhm.
move up there and I do a meditation on Bell Rock, which is one of the very famous vortexes there, and have an intention. And I say, tell me where I'm supposed to go with my life because things are really not so great right now. And so I did this long meditation and kind of got in touch. And so, and I placed it out there. And about 3 months later, I was on a hike. I was doing a lot of hiking and I was on a hike and I started having this bliss attack during the hike. And that's when the book started coming to me and this whole system and create this system that is similar, to, the Alcoholics Anonymous 12 steps, but completely different. So it was like to try to, but I had seen that work for people. And so this whole thing came to me and to use the word sorcery, but to use a U to separate it, from, I don't know how to, turn my roommate into a frog or anything. I can't levitate the remote into my hand just yet. But so it's not that kind of sorcery. But so to use the U and kind of separate it from wizards and Harry Potter and stuff. So that all came to me at once. And so the system of kind of, you know, I kind of thought about it and was like, okay, well, 12 steps is like, well, 13 is a very important number, first of all, because 13, I want immediately to start people questioning their beliefs because 13 is not unlucky. That's crap. It's so unlucky here in the States that we don't have, 13 floors on hotels, which we do, but they call it the 14th floor, which is ridiculous. It is not unlucky at all. It is actually a divine number, a very feminine number. It's actually the number in tarot that is responsible. It's death, rebirth, and transformation, which is what sorcery is all about. Death to yourself, rebirth, transformation. So I picked 13 and to get people to start questioning their beliefs. And then instead of steps, I thought, well, moving forward is good, but moving up is better because, a bird has a better perspective on things than a worm. So 13 rungs instead of 12 steps. So, and it's for everybody. There's no symptom discrimination. That's another thing I can't stand about Alcoholics Anonymous is the symptom discrimination. You can't go into I was always be so pissed off. I can't talk about drugs in my alcohol meeting because all the old people in there is like, we don't do drugs. Alcohol is a drug. Alcohol is the worst drug. So, it's that kind of like, and you can't go into these institutions and change things. And that's part of it too, is like, you can't go to Alcoholics Anonymous and say, well, why don't we just make some changes at 12 steps? Or, no, this works. No, well, it works for you. But, trauma healing is not one size fits all. And that is one thing I caught on very quickly. And there's some great things about Alcoholics Anonymous. They have the whole, community stuff and the meetings and people. That's amazing. That's fantastic. I would never tell people to never go to AA meetings, but to get trapped in the dogma of it and to think that you're powerless and the whole separation thing of, drugs, we're not the same. You have a gambling problem or you have a sex addiction problem or you have a drug problem. We're not the same. That's crap. That is total crap.
Yeah.
So there's some issues I had with it. So this is something
Mhm.
that, and you don't even need to be struggling with an addiction per se. The anxiety, depression, these are all stemming from that core thing of spiritual bankruptcy. So that bliss attack is where all this came in. So
Mm.
that was an important one.
Well, I just think, there's a thread of truth through everything that you're sharing with us today because it's like your body knew when you were being told things that were not true, and it manifested in other, different ways to kind of tell you this is not true. You need to, you know, keep looking, keep digging, keep seeking, whatever, So parts of the AA process were true to you, but others weren't. Parts of Christianity were true to you, but others weren't, So you kept looking until you found what you needed to, fill your cup, and then you started getting downloads so you could share with others. So I think that's great for anybody out there trying to figure out, when I know something isn't true, I may not know what the truth is, but I know if it's not true when I hear it or I feel it. You got to go with your gut in so many ways when you're going through these things. But addiction is just, I can't say that I've ever been there to that level, but there's definitely alcoholism in my family. There's addictive behaviors, but I've never been in rehab. Um, but I would just, being a raised Catholic, being around all that dogma, I totally get it. When you knew like parts of this make sense and parts of this do not. So I think it's a great lesson for people out there listening and maybe struggling with the idea of, I think most of this is working for me, but parts of it are not. But can you maybe walk folks through a little bit about how you sought out a shaman and what kind of, you know, benefits you're finding with working with a shaman in that process? Because that could be, something that people aren't really aware of out there.
Yeah, the shamanistic arts is, the shaman, the best, and I would love. So this is I have sorcery 101, and my plan is for sorcery 201. The next level up is I want to be trained as a shaman. I am not a trained shaman. I like to say my last name is Shaw, so it's like a Shaw man. But it really opened my eyes to things that, you know, every religion is both right and wrong. It's like there's aspects to it all, but it's all the same thing. And so it that's what the sorcery thing is, taking the best parts of all religions, and that's kind of what shamanism is. It's just energy work, taking the best parts of all religions and leaving the rest, the stuff that doesn't serve us, that was put there to kind of control people, and it's been a system and a form of control for a very, very long time. And the way you control people is with fear. So,
Yeah.
that's it's I see that now, and that's what the shaman helped me to see was he got in there without forcing anything. I like to say sorcery is about opening minds, not changing them. And that's what he did. He was able to, and so he was more he did the energy work too, that he can kind of, the pendulums and open up the chakras. And they have the real energy, the reiki healing. There's lots of different kinds of energy healing, but where he succeeded the most was he was just able to get into my soul and get me to open up and question things and start getting rid of these limiting beliefs, starting questioning, understanding what the shadow is and
Mhm.
how that side of us works. And I love to say, I'm a little bit Deepak and a little bit Tupac. And
Mhm.
that's all of us. There's the shadow and the sorcerer, the divine. It's those two sides, and knowing both of them and understanding and having a relationship with the shadow, not resisting it and becoming friends with it. And these are all, things that he was opening me up to that have just helped immensely, and that, are all part of the book and in there and part of this. It's kind of a map for people to have their own bliss attack. But for me, to have, very paradoxically, what stood in the way of a true religious experience was religion. So it
Yeah.
was once I started deconstructing those beliefs, and that's, this bliss attack. That's what people talk about when they say I have a religious experience. It's these bliss attacks that are just unbelievable, and you can't explain them to people unless they've had them themselves. I can explain a little bit. I'm pretty good with words, but like truly, you just until you have one, you're like, oh, now I get it. And that's part of it is working with that shaman, and he just changed everything for me. And I'm so grateful to him.
Yeah, I think love and, God, source, energy, whatever you wanna call it, is going to be something that more and more of us are going to experience. I hope so. And we may not all experience a bliss attack, but hopefully we'll have moments where we just see glimpses of what that source is like because we have it in all of us. It is all of us. I really loved the parts of your introduction where you used humor to really get to the core of what source is. Like if anybody's a Star Wars fan, then the force. You get that concept of what the force is. And I think if anybody has any kind of spirituality or religious background, then they understand source energy and God source or whatever they call it. But I think the bliss attack is going to be something that, is going to be hard for some people to kind of wrap their brains around. Can you kind of just, share a little bit more about what it felt like for you? Like you said, it was just love, an all-encompassing love, and it lasted for 3 hours the first time.
Mhm.
Can you describe it a little bit more for viewers and listeners?
Yeah, I mean, it's like that feeling of being in love without focusing on a human. So it's like, the first time when you're, just super in love and that feeling, but there's no focus to the love. It's
Mhm,
just happening naturally. It's like I like to call it my near life attack, or my near life. You call it a near death experience. It's my near life
mhm,
experience. And so it was because I wasn't dead by any means, and I was not crossed over in any sort of spirit way. I was still very much in my body. So a lot of people talk about leaving their body. I've never done that. It
mhm,
sounds amazing, and I'd love to someday. Maybe I'm really hoping that happens, but it hasn't happened to me
mhm.
yet.
Yeah.
I think I'd know. So, but this was like it was like instead of physically crossing, I was emotionally crossed over to the other side.
Mm.
And
Mhm,
that's how I
mhm,
knew the death isn't real and it's just this is all just a big illusion, dream, whatever. That the
mhm,
real reality is there. Whatever is
mhm,
on that side, whatever I was feeling, that's reality. This is not. And and it just changed my opinion on just how to treat things and take things so seriously and just taking things so seriously and just not an understanding that this is all just a big simulation. I consider it to be, and that's what I was unified with my higher self in this moment.
mhm,
We became one. Normally, that's that the higher self is your player. If you're a computer, then your brain is the software, your body is the computer, but who you actually are is the person on the computer, the witness, the observer. You are a loving awareness of yourself. And that's who I
mhm,
realized I was. And
mhm,
so once you get in contact with this player character, you're no longer, I was a role player character. I was just there. I wasn't, if you're not constantly questioning your thoughts and feelings before they become actions, you're relegated to an organic robot. And that's what I
mm,
realized I was. I was just a
mhm.
robot. And they're everywhere. You see them everywhere. The role play, it's a
Yeah,
real. And this whole simulation thing is just for us to get to practice love. That's what I realized is that
mhm,
because love is the one thing that transcends space and time. And it is what we will both leave here and take with us. It is the only
mm,
thing that matters. It's the only thing that matters. So that is the simulation, what we're supposed to be just like a flight simulator. You get in there in a non-consequential atmosphere to practice flying, to take those skills into the quote real world, and you fly the airplane. Well, this is a simulation of love. That's what we're supposed
yeah,
to be getting better at. That's what we're here to do. And that's what I realized. It's not like the Matrix. It's not that kind of simulation. It's where there's, that's
yeah,
but it's not scary at all. It's beautiful. It's beautiful on the other side. There's no, AI is not using our energies for batteries, and it's not like that. It's not like the Matrix simulation. But it is a beautiful simulation. But that's what it is. And
mm,
once you get in touch with that higher self, you become a player character. Now you're in charge of everything. Now you can create and make your life magical. But you have to be in touch with your higher self, which is one of the rungs I get into and how to do that.
mhm.
There's a formula in how to start getting in touch with your higher self and how to never make a quote wrong decision again.
Yeah, and that's great that you give folks practical steps in your book. In 13 rungs, you have your process. You've talked about the background of why you chose 13. For people listening and watching out there, can you skip any of the steps or rungs? Can you skip any of the rungs, or do you need to do them in order?
No, that's the beautiful part. Is like that's one thing about the 12 steps is I never appreciate the rigidity of it. Like there's
Mhm.
no skipping anything, there's no moving. It is 1, 2, 3. You do not skip, you work with a sponsor, you cannot move on to one to the other until he says you're done. And that's just
Yeah,
so boring and strict and ugh. So no, there's 13 of them, and it's good to read them all, but it's very fluid. There are ones that need more focus, and then there are ones that might come more naturally. So for me, health is wealth is the fourth one, and I don't really need as much
mhm,
focus on that. I just do it naturally. For me, like I was taking when I was writing the book, taking care of my body, eating right, working out. Those were things that were coming naturally. I don't need to focus on that because it just happens. But there are other ones in there that, might require more attention. And so those are the ones that might stick out and become more important. But there was no, they just came to me in the order that they're in, but they're not in any order, if that makes
gotcha,
sense. So
gotcha.
yeah, it's
Yep,
very fluid. Yeah, the rungs.
they're all essential, but they can be moved around as
Yeah, they
needed.
can be moved around. And yeah, the
Okay.
focus, it's the main ones you want to give more attention to are the ones you struggle with. So like I said, yeah, and then there's ones that you don't need to maybe focus on as much, but it's very fluid. Move around, like, I'm gonna focus on this for a while until that gets programmed, and then I'll focus on
Mhm.
that, and so that's kind of how it works. It's all about reprogramming.
And you talked a little bit about the shaman, link with chakra work. Do you see alignment with your 13 rungs with any of the alignment with the chakras or energy?
Yeah, that's the 12th rung is I call that chakra life, and it's focused on the chakras, and realizing that they are real, they're energy centers, and the importance of each one, which one is which, what area they're in, what they're nerve centers and they are energy centers. And chakra means swirling spiral, I think, or something like that. That's the translation. And they're swirling energy centers that are there's seven attached to the body. You can get really deep. There's ones that are even higher than that. I kind of go into the eighth one, which is kind of the Koth. It's the soul chakra that's above here. But apparently, I mean, I've been learning more and more that there's a bunch of them. Yeah, I don't get too deeply into the ones above. I do kind of get into the one immediately above, but I don't get into all of them that are above. But the seven ones that are attached, there's seven, and it's important to know what they're doing. And there's usually an imbalance of when people are struggling. There's an imbalance of energy, and usually almost always it's the lower ones that there's too much energy to. It can be opposite, and there could be two ones in the higher ones, but it's much more rare. It's usually you want to move that energy. There's too much in the lower ones, and you want to move them up. So there's
Right.
meditations do that, the shamanism, the energy work. But yeah, that is one of the rungs, and it's just important for people to know that they are real and what they do, and to respect them.
Yes. Do you focus any on the bridge from one chakra to another and kind of unlocking each one? Or is it just more the process of your rung? Um,
So yeah, I mean there's like meditations that I love doing that's kind of like bridging each one and kind of
mhm,
focusing. There's ones I write that are good, and the colors of them, and imagining the colors and the spinning wheel and kind of moving the energies to each one. In the
mhm,
book it's more just kind of going over like what they are, how the energy gets stored. It's from which traumas are stored in which region, and
mhm,
and the colors and what they're, so it's more just kind of factual stuff
mhm,
than kind of getting into the deep shamanism. That's kind of shaman work. And like I said, I'm
mhm.
not trained as a shaman, so I didn't want to get
Right.
too deep into that portion of it. And we'll save that for Sorcery 201, right?
Yeah,
when
yeah.
I get trained as a shaman, and that's where I'll
Mhm.
probably, be diving into and getting into that more. But it was, yeah, in the book it's just more factual stuff of these are real, respect them, and kind of why you're struggling and all the stuff that gets trapped and all that. So yeah.
Yeah. So I'm thinking back through what you've shared so far and, thinking about your mom and how you felt about losing your mom, and then thinking because of the doctrine and the dogma that was being shared with you while you were going through rehab that you thought that she wasn't going to go to heaven. Have you had any connection with her since you've done this, or did your, work with your shaman kind of alleviate any of those fears? Like, where are you now with that thinking?
Oh yeah, no, I'm completely over that. She's her energy is in the bliss attack. Like she was part of the bliss attack, like letting me know. Again, it's not, she wasn't standing next to me, I didn't hear
Mhm.
anything. It was just an energy, and it was this transfer of energy that she's doing just fine, and
Great.
she's there, and that is all crap. I mean, I
Mhm.
believe in multiple dimensions. There is a dimension of negativity because it has to be kept somewhere. Otherwise, it's gonna, mess with the light, and then it's gonna create chaos, and we're not gonna have a nice dimension to move on to. So it's kept somewhere, but I don't think people go there. I don't think anyone goes there.
Yeah.
So, I think, people that screw up kind of badly on this plane have another go, or maybe that if they've done nothing but chaos and torture, and maybe that,
Mhm.
they're thrown back into the torturee and the person who's been tortured, and it's like, well, this
Mhm.
is what, learn from this, because I think we're all one conscious thing having different experiences. So it would be like my mind, sending a section of my mind and punish. It's like, no, that doesn't sound right. Like, so we're all here to learn and to grow spiritually, and so yes, no, I'm way past that, and I wish I could have been a more cheery person towards the end of life, but she's let it go. I've let it go. It's just, it was what it was, but she's doing just fine. Yeah.
Do you subscribe to any of the ideas of like it was a soul contract that either your mother or you had where you had to learn that and then it was fulfilled?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I completely And this is someone that, like, struggling, if you told me is like, well, you chose this, like, you chose to
Mhm.
be here because you're supposed to learn something, I would have, wanted to throw a book at you or something, like,
Sure.
get out of here. I chose
Yeah.
this, like, while I'm sitting
Yeah.
wallowing in my misery, like, I didn't choose shit, like I do. So it's,
Mm.
but now I get it. I get it.
Mhm.
I've learned, and without going through that pain, there's no way I could be doing what I'm doing, and having, there's sympathy and empathy, and I have true empathy for people struggling now. Sympathy is just listening to people's pain. Empathy is feeling it with them, and now I feel that.
Mhm.
It's very deep. And so yes, I absolutely understand why I chose this. Time isn't real. What we're experiencing is not even a second. It feels like an eternity. Like it's, I'm halfway through, maybe not quite halfway, but it's getting there. But that's time. It feels real. But when we're sent in,
Mhm.
this is what happens when people have that experience at the end of life, when their whole lives. It's because it just gets, and we have that Akashic review that's like, how did you do? And I think that's where the idea of hell comes from is, some people's Akashic reviews, you're going to feel everything that you made other people feel, good or
Mhm.
bad. And if you've
Mhm.
been doing nothing but torment people, you're going to feel that. And that's going to be quite hellish experience, for people that have been. So there is, no one gets away with anything. No one gets away with anything, nothing.
Mhm. Yeah.
And that's what I can see now. I chose this and I get it now. I used to not subscribe to that at all, but I did choose this and it was a soul contract. It was fulfilled and it's still being
So what's next for you?
next. Well, I mean, that's the fun part. It's like I have no idea what I'm doing. Like I don't know what I'm doing, and but I'm not supposed to.
Mm.
I'm just kind of living and just letting things unfold. I was given this.
Mhm.
The one thing, you have to answer the phone when it starts ringing. And so once you answer the phone, then you just do the next thing. Your higher self is, once you get that line, your higher self is going to guide you every single day. And if you just keep doing the next thing, it's going to lead
Mhm.
places. So
Mhm.
I'm very early in this career. As a book came out last year, it's probably been about 9 months. I've forced myself back on social media. I was off of it for 4 years. It was wonderful. I was like a bit like horse wearing blinders. I ran a better race, but social media again, the world is a world of gray. It's both helpful and destructive. It's how you use it. So, it's
Mhm.
kind of getting back on there, and I get emails from people, and being on shows like this, and so it's progressing. And so what I'd really like to do is mix the comedy and the spirituality. I call that,
Mhm.
mystical comedy. And so I'd
Mhm.
love to take tours. It's a different path. So I have to forge my own way. I can't just go up to, a comedian anymore and like that's past me. I don't want to go up
Mhm.
on stage at 10 o'clock at night with an audience that's
Mm-mm.
half drunk. And, I want to start my set with a meditation. I'm gonna get booed off the stage. No one's gonna want to do that.
No.
That's not
Yeah,
the
no.
elevated audience I'm looking for.
No.
So I
Uh-uh.
have to create it. So that's
Mhm.
what's kind of next is creating an audience and want to get back out there. And I'd be really good with mixing the comedy and the spirituality. I'm to make people laugh, think, and feel is
Mhm.
growth. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm going towards and trying to work towards. And I'm just letting it unfold. I have no idea what I'm doing, but it's so much fun.
Well, that's great because the world definitely needs humor, and we're all gonna need some help getting through this next level of, downloads. Some
Especially
people are
young
open to
men.
it. Mm,
Young men is who I'm really trying to reach, and that's who I'm really, but you have to know how to speak to them because this is a very toxic male-centered world, and I came from that, so I get it, but embracing my feminine side has made me so much happier. I was pushing it off, and that was part of my misery, was like, "No, I have to be a man, and there's no emotions, and blah, 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 and I have to be an asshole," and, there's just all this stuff, and it's like, "N no, that's not none of that's true." So now I've been given a language to speak to younger males. I was just at a convention with Greg Braden, Bruce Lipton, and all these guys, and it was 80% female, and about 60% were over 50. So this is a mostly largely older female, but spirituality is for everybody. So, but you just know how to speak to them. And so speaking through the language of pop culture parables, technology metaphors, airplane mode, and the pop culture with the force and as well as humor. You mix those things together, Now I can get through to younger males and get them to embrace the feminine side because it's such a better life. It's just I truly believe I have this amazing 50-50, and females will like you more. You'll get more females and you'll keep females longer if you embrace it and understand the feminine side. Because if you say, I got to be a guy and attract girls, it's like, well, if you let in some feminines, they're going to really trust me. They're going to really respect and like that. I'm trying to get out to this untapped audience of these younger males and get these ideas out there. You just got to learn to speak their language.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you definitely have it with your pop culture and your references in your book. I think you made me laugh quite a few times. And I mean, anytime anybody's going to go into a mental health space, rehab, I'm sure you're going to have lots of stories. I was in schools for 20 plus years, and there's lots of content there as well. So you're a great storyteller. So I hope that you keep sharing that with the world. So are you really going to go get trained in shamanism? Is that what you're thinking as well? Okay.
That is definitely. I got to work on the financing part of it because it's rather expensive. It's the one I want to go to is in South America,
Mm.
and it's called the Four Winds Training, and so it's a bit pricey, but that's I'm you just I just got to work on calling in that, yeah, inviting it in. I'm sending my book to publishers and the next book because I didn't send this one out because I was nobody. I didn't think anyone would even open my email, so I self-published it. But I've got more in me, so now I'm kind of embracing it and sending it out to seeing if publishers want to do it because I'm kind of tapped out for now. But it's just calling it in, and but that is definitely where I want to go with the next book is and using that kind of what I call kind of gonzo journalism, Hunter S. Thompson, kind of going in and, making the experience and making it fun and not just about what it is, but my experience in the whole thing. And so I've got a whole plan for it. It's just got to unfold and come together with time here.
Well, this has been a quick hour. I really appreciate your time. Do you have any final thoughts you want to share with listeners and viewers before I let you go?
Couple things, yeah. So you can find the book on Amazon. It's also on Audible, which a lot of people don't have time to sit down and read a book. I get that. It's on Spotify too. It's on the website as well. But the audio, I get to tell my own jokes and I do my own do voices. It's pretty funny. Yeah, so it's on Audible, and so the website is Awaken the Sorcerer, but spelled with a U. Instagram is sorcerer_13 with a U. And then you can email me if you can't afford a book, but you want to read it. I can send you a free copy, free PDF, because it's just more about just getting this stuff out there right now. So if you want a free copy of the a PDF, I could absolutely send that to you. Just email me at sorcerer with a U 13. So sorcerer13 at Gmail. And I like to leave people with this fun tidbit that really starts the healing. So I was always told, live life like it's your last day. And that no longer works for me because honestly, someone like me, my last day kind of looks like, well, I'm going to get up, I'm not going to do my yoga and meditation because it's my last day. I'll probably, start drinking, I'll end up at a bar and I might end up robbing a pharmacy. I don't know because it's my last day. Who cares? So, that's kind of let the shadow go. It's my last day. So I feel like that's terrible advice. And so I feel like if we start living life like it's our first day, well, now you're building something towards the future. You're working on something, you're working towards something. The most important part to healing is having that childlike curiosity of your first day on earth. What is that like? You're going to look around and we're here to embrace the beauty of everything. Start looking around, start getting curious about things, curious about people. It'll help with your interaction with people if you start getting curious about what is this person going through? Like, why are they treating me like such? What is going on in your? I'm really. Do you need a hug? Like starting to have that curiosity about other people, about the world, and just building something for the future. So that is the one thing I love to leave people with, and it's helped me so much is start living life like it's your first day, not your last.
That's very reflective. Well, this has been a great conversation. Thank you, Justin, for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been great.
Take care, everybody. And until next time, the light in me honors the light in you. And as you head into the rest of your week, let your light shine through. Go slow to go fast. And thanks for listening.